Rhys Hoskins' start has been certainly publicized a lot, but as Ryan Lawrence writes at PhillyVoice.com, he's not the only one. How about Nick Williams really producing as well? So we'll get into him, the young players on this team, and then all of a sudden, Ryan, there's some reasons to want to watch this Phillies baseball team. It only took them 8 months.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's like, we've all been kind of watching this rebuild and, waiting for pieces to actually come up and to be able to watch. And, we can talk about Allentown and Reading and Clearwater and Lakewood all we want, but eventually people want to see it at the major league, they want to see it affect a major league product. And you're starting to see that, for sure. What Rhys Hoskins has done in his first 2 weeks in the big leagues is historic. There's only 3 guys in the history of Major League Baseball who have hit 8 home runs in less than 50 at-bats, and he's one of those 3 guys. So that's impressive. So, yeah, as I wrote, pretty well, too, and he's been here for 2 months. So to do it for 2 months, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I want to get into both of these guys, but Hoskins obviously has been historic. And what are some of the things that have been impressive to make you feel like, yeah, he's not going to hit 9 home runs every 2 weeks for the rest of his career, but his approach seems to be a big league approach.
Yeah, because what you can compare this to is just a year ago, 14 months ago, Tommy Joseph came out from AAA, and Tommy Joseph had a monster first month at Lehigh Valley and earned a promotion, and he got a promotion, and they slowly worked him in the lineup.
We lost Ryan there. He seems like he's breaking up a little. We'll put him on hold and have him come back in. Ryan Lawrence, PhillyVoice.com. You can read his Phillies work on Twitter at RyanLawrence21. Check out his piece on Rhys Hoskins. He wrote about him just the other day. He also wrote about Nick Williams and sat down with both of these guys. And definitely want to get more insight on both of these players. The Hoskins stuff, which is just out of control, the way that he has taken off here with 9 home runs in 15 games. But since the beginning of 2016, as Ryan Lawrence writes, Rhys Hoskins has 78 home runs. 78 home runs in 1,003 plate appearances. That's 271 games. So that's including Double-A, Winter League Ball, Triple-A, and now Major League Baseball. But that's 5 in his last 6 games and 8 in his first 15 Major League games. So, Ryan, as you were chronicling about his approach and the parallels with a guy like Tommy Joseph.
Yeah, the point I was trying to make is that when Tommy Joseph first came up, he was showing a lot of power, too. I think he hit 7 home runs in his first 21 games and 16 starts. So, it was sort of similar. But the difference was he was also striking out a lot and not walking a lot. I think that's kind of the player Tommy Joseph is, where I think Hoskins has a little bit more plate discipline. He has shown the ability to draw walks. He has shown the ability to, lay off bad pitches. Is he going to strike out? Sure, every power hitter is going to strike out. But, if you have a keen eye at the plate and can also work some walks, that'll do wonders for your career. And I think he has that, and I think he showed that in the last couple of years in the minor leagues, too. So it's not just power with him. He has pretty good plate discipline.
How has his left field play been?
Okay. And that's probably what we could have expected. I mean, he was a guy that hadn't played left field, period, until 2 weeks ago. He played briefly in his freshman year in college. But, yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy that's at first base for a reason. He's not athletic enough to be an outfielder. He's just out of there. He's just out there because, they still want to continue to look at Tommy Joseph in the next month. But, they're going to have to make decisions on a lot of these guys sooner than later. So, yeah, we'll see how long Tommy Joseph's around. I think next year there's a pretty good chance that Rhys Hoskins is your opening day first base.
Well, I was going to say, right, how much is this last 2 months of the season, when Hoskins came up, and now are the Phillies evaluating and trying, because they've done a lot of things we'll get into. They moved Crawford over to play some third. Obviously, now they're trying to figure out what to do with him down the road. But these last 2 months all of a sudden got pretty interesting.
Yeah, and, it makes sense. Scott Kingery also started at shortstop last night at AAA. So really all they're doing there is just increasing their options moving forward. And, Kingery and Crawford will most likely be the second base and shortstop for the future. But it can't hurt to learn and to be able to play other positions because, next year, who knows, maybe Michael Franco won't be here. Maybe Freddie Galvis won't be here. Or maybe they'll have 2 or 3 different guys that can play second base, but not enough guys that can play third base. So, it just helps. Or say Freddie Galvis gets hurt opening day next year, and, you have J.P. Crawford out there, or say Freddie Galvis is traded and J.P. Crawford gets hurt, you need someone else to be able to play shortstop. So it just increases all the options going forward for guys to be able to play other positions. It's not like they're trying to permanently change anybody's position.
How about Crawford, though? With Galvis, I know so many people rave about Galvis's shortstop play. Crawford, not so much. I mean, is it legitimate to think that maybe J.P. Crawford could play third base?
Yeah, I mean, once upon a time, there was a guy named Manny Machado who was a pretty good player. That was a top prospect. I think he was a 3rd overall pick in a draft, and he was a shortstop prospect. And I think he was his pro career, his first 3 minor league seasons, he was a shortstop. And then the Orioles saw that, okay, well, we like J.J. Hardy, and we value what he brings to this team, too. Manny Machado is probably good enough a defender. We could put him at third, and he's never left. I think he's made a couple starts here and there at short, but he is their third baseman, and he is one of the best fielding third basemen in all baseball, in addition to what he does offensively. So, yeah, it's possible. But, Freddie Galvis is also a free agent after next year. So, yeah, they value what Freddie brings, not only defensively, which, he's clearly one of the best defensive players in the league, but also, he's held his own offensively. He's never going to be an above-average hitter, without a doubt. But he's also a leader in that locker room. He is the guy that leads by example, brings energy every day, has a positive attitude, which, when you're going through a rebuild like the Phillies are, you can have disgruntled veterans. Only a couple of years ago we had those. So he brings a good attitude that kind of rubs off on everybody else. And I'm not saying that makes him the long-term shortstop, but it's something that you value going into next year and you wouldn't mind still having on your roster.
We're talking with Ryan Lawrence, PhillyVoice.com. How about Nick Williams? He's a guy that is getting overshadowed by the fact that Hoskins has come up here, and he's been up here a little bit longer, but his numbers have been pretty nice, 293 in the 2 months up here, but there's something else that he is doing that's standing out.
Yeah, as I wrote today, that he's walking, and, it's not like he's walking like but not more than he did in the minor leagues. If you look at his walks per plate appearance, I believe his walk rate is around 7 or a little higher than 7s in the 3s. So you're talking, he's one sample size, so it's not exactly a small sample size. He's almost at 200 plate appearances with the big leagues now. So that's a good sign. And if he can continue to do that, that's going to make him a better hitter. Because that was the knock on him in the last couple of years, is that, yeah, he's an outfielder, he has some pop, but he strikes out a ton and doesn't walk a lot. So you can live with the strikeouts if you're walking a little bit, and he's been able to do that, particularly in the last couple of weeks. And then that's important, especially if you're batting ahead of Rhys Hoskins. The more guys on base, the better it is for the Phillies.
Yeah, and, Williams is a guy that they had some hopes for in that trade. They have Altair. I guess really they got to figure out whether they're, Herrera, I guess, is here if they signed him. And then as you mentioned, Hoskins is probably not a big league outfielder, so he'll be moved out. So it's nice, though, to see the makings of some of these young guys getting the opportunity to play and that they're taking advantage of it, because 2 months ago, man, it was a lot of gloom and doom of, man, if these guys get called up, there's not a lot of guarantee that they can even play. At least we've got the opportunity to see some of these guys and see, okay, they're not that bad. And I guess the next guy would be Alfaro. What have you thought of him at this level? Because a lot of it wasn't offensively for him. It's been defensively that people were questioning him.
Yeah, and that's probably part of the reason he started at first base last week is they're a little bit uncomfortable having him catch Nola and Eichhoff, two of the more veteran guys in the roster, and with good reason. Those guys are also trying to develop. So yeah, it's a work in progress with Jorge defensively, and I think that's something that he'll be able to continue to work on next year. I think probably the best case scenario next year is that he's kind of in a timeshare, similar to what Knapp was in this year. Maybe it's those two that are in timeshare. Although maybe you'd like a veteran back there too. But yeah, that would be one way to do it. But yeah, offensively has held his own, which is surprising because he did not have a very good offensive year at AAA, especially in his last 2.5 months. His numbers were dreadful. I think he was hitting under 200 and had a on-base percentage like maybe in the 230s. I forget it offhand, but it was not very good. And his power wasn't even really there. So he really was not having a great year in AAA and was only called up because Knapp went on the DL, and he was the only other catcher on the 40-man roster. So, I think what we're seeing from Alfaro is nice in a short period of time here. But, yeah, I think he's still got a long way to go to get where they hope that he can be one day. And, I'm not saying that won't happen. But yeah, he's obviously a little bit behind where Williams and Hoskins are.
Yeah, the calendar turns to September in a couple of days here, Ryan. Do we anticipate seeing anybody else come up?
Well, I think JP. I think all signs are pointing to that he could earn a promotion. I mean, he's a guy that I also wrote about this week. He really has turned around his season because he was having a dreadful season at AAA just about 3 months ago. Heading into July, I think he was hitting under 200. But the last 2.5 months, or maybe it's heading into June. But anyway, the last 2.5 months, his numbers are across the board great. And one of the things that really stands out is the power. He was a guy that never had showed a lot of power in his minor league career. And I guess he's young, too, so you have to remember a lot of these guys grow into their power. Kingery is another example of that. But, yeah, he's grown into his power this year, and he's become more aggressive in hitters' accounts. And, yeah, so they can reward him for his play. And he has to be added to the 40-man roster this winter anyway. So what's the harm in giving him a little bit of a look in September? And, they should be able to do that. If they feel comfortable, he could play a little third base. And I'm not saying he's going to start every day, but kind of do the same thing they did with Roman Quinn last year and the same thing they did with Alfaro last year. And that's just to give these guys a little bit of a taste of the big league, so they're not as overwhelmed next year when they're called up and it isn't their first time and they don't have that kind of deer in headlights look.
So the young players get a lot of the attention. So I would guess that September is a pretty big month for a Tommy Joseph and maybe a Maikel Franco.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was just pulling into the parking lot.
The fact that September is a lot of young players get the attention, but I guess guys like Joseph and Franco are going to be under the spotlight this month.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are guys that not having great years, especially. And Joseph's really has come down in the last couple months, but Franco really just hasn't had a good year. Period. And the thing with this rebuild is you have to find out about players, but the audition does not last 3 years. Like, eventually you need to show something. And, besides that first rookie year when, he also broke his hand and it got cut short, besides that, he hasn't really shown a whole lot of, being a consistent run producer. And, eventually, what I would say is that by All-Star break next year, if he's not here, I wouldn't be shocked because, he might get, going into next year, you might get the first 2 months of the season to kind of, okay, let's do it. Because you do have to remember he's young. He's the same age as Rhys Hoskins. But you still have to show something. And it's been a while, and he hasn't shown a whole lot. So, maybe this is the month for him and for Tommy Joseph to kind of salvage these seasons and to show something. So, yeah, there's still some games here, and they can still do it. But you have to be a little bit pessimistic just from what you've seen already.
Yeah, they get lost in the shuffle sometimes. They're very young players. Franco's very young, as you just mentioned. Joseph, very young. They were the hot guys. Joseph was just a year ago, as you mentioned. He came up here on fire. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things flip for these guys. That they go from the young guy that everybody wants to see to the guy that we've seen enough of you. Let's move on to the next toy.
Yeah, it's scary, and that's unfortunately, it's a lot of the Philadelphia mentality. It's a football city, and people aren't quite patient, and they want to see the next best thing almost right away. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at guys like Rhys Hoskins and Nick Williams. And if you're a guy like Rhys Hoskins and you read anything that's said on social media about Tommy Joseph, you have to be thinking to yourself, "Geez, I better keep this up, or they're going to turn on me too." So yeah, I mean, you have to remember in baseball, these guys becoming major league players and productive major league players isn't always happen right away, I should say. You have to be a little bit patient. But like I said, some of these guys have been given pretty big auditions, long auditions. A guy like Franco for sure. Joseph hasn't been up in the major leagues anywhere near as long as Franco. So, it's really a case-by-case basis for all these guys.
Hey, Ryan, we talked a lot about offense. Eflin, 616, Lively, 370, Pivetta, 673, Jake Thompson, 540. The young pitching was supposed to be the exciting thing. Have they soured on some of these guys?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the young pitching, I think what you could say going into the year, they had a lot of it. There's depth. But I don't think they necessarily felt like they had any studs. I mean, I think if you looked at all those guys, Nola still had the biggest ceiling, and I don't think anybody else was really close. Thompson, maybe a year and a half ago, that was the case, but he's also a guy that doesn't throw that hard. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely disappointing. I think a guy like Pivetta probably got rushed to the big leagues a little bit out of necessity. He had a really good first month at AAA, but we've seen enough of him this year that we could probably make the pretty good come to the pretty good conclusion that he just wasn't big league ready as a 6 ERA. Even if he does throw hard, he still has stuff to work on. So yeah, it's very disappointing that none of these young pitchers have emerged. But like I said, I'm not sure there was ever a can't miss prospect among them. That's something the Phillies have to work on. They have guys in the lower levels of the minor leagues. One of the guys just got the Double-A, Franklin Colome. A lot of them are at A ball or below. So they're coming slowly, but what the Phillies are probably going to have to do is probably going to have to look on the outside and make a trade. And that's where, you talked about this outfield depth they have and some of the other depth they have at other positions, including the middle infield. Maybe you put together a package and trade for a young pitcher.
All right, Ryan Lawrence, check out his Phillies work at phillyvoice.com. Follow him on Twitter at RyanLawrence21, and check out his piece on Nick Williams, Rhys Hoskins, and a lot of the young Phillies players. Thanks, pal.
All right, have a great weekend, guys.